Hi and welcome back. We'll now talk about system shutdown. If you have any questions, please use the question and comment box. And we'll get started with looking into system shutdown. Now in this module, we'll talk about different ways to shut down the system. Any good system administrator knows that you can't just simply press the power button or just issue one simple command and bring down the system in an effective way. That's especially true in a production environment. If this system is being used, then how do you warn users? Or maybe you don't want to bring down the system immediately. How do you make sure the system comes down at an appropriate time? Those are different options that we'll look at as we explore different methods of system shutdown and reboot. Additionally, I know you've seen a system shutdown many times before, but we're going to give a quick demo of different ways to shut down the system and utilize the concepts that we describe as we talk through this particular module. So, back to system shutdown. Now, you'll recall from the second part of the system startup modules that there were various init run levels that were very important to understanding how the system starts up. Well, the same is the case with system shutdown. It's really important to understand the different run levels that are associated with a shutdown as well. We specifically talked about two different run levels that were reserved for the system shutting down. Init 0 was a halt level, which basically meant that the system wasn't running at all. And the init 6 was a reboot level, reserved for restarting the system. Those two run levels are very important to understand as we continue to talk about concepts of system shutdown. So let's keep those in mind during our discussion. Now, there are different ways to issue a shutdown. There are so many options that we can issue. Some examples are we could issue a broadcast message. So we could send a message to all current users that the system will be shutting down. We can also tell the system to wait. We can also provide it a confirmation prompt. We could even send it to a specific run level. But all of that is configurable. And the only way you'll really learn all of those parameters is by looking in detail at the shutdown command using something like the man pages. But there are a few options that you may want to use as you shut down your Red Hat system. For instance, the -H command. That will take the system to a halt state. So shutdown -H tells the system to go all the way down, not go down and reboot to another run level, not to shut down partially, no, to shut down the system completely. -Y provides a timeout or a number of seconds that will be required to elapse before the system is brought down. So if we were to say -Y -300 or -Y 300, that means give the system 5 minutes before shutting down. -R, shut down and then reboot to a default RC level. So the -R basically is a reboot rather than a real shutdown. The now command, or the -now option or flag, really is equivalent to a Y0. And if we were to tell the system to wait 0 seconds before shutting down, what would happen? Well, there would be no wait. And so we can see why there is that -now option. It's just like telling the system to shut down immediately. Let's look at a few more examples of a shutdown command we can issue. Shutdown -RY. Well, what this will tell the system to do is to reboot to the default run level in Y seconds. And we pass it 120. Again, that number is in seconds, so 120 seconds is 2 minutes. So this is an example of a shutdown command that will tell the system to reboot in 2 minutes. -H. Shut down the system immediately right now and bring it completely down. Remember the -H command was for halt, and we could also pass a now flag, and that was the same as Y0. So immediately shut down the system completely and take it to a halt state. Again, by learning the options as with all the commands that you'll use as you're working as a system administrator, you can really see the power of one command to do two completely different tasks. Reboot the system in 2 minutes or shut it down completely right now. Same command, different options. A couple more examples. To understand those examples, just remember that the halt command means to shut down the system immediately, right now. To reboot, you can issue a shutdown -R. And to power off, shutdown -H. Now, the reason why I put these examples in is that each one of these is a standalone aliased command inside Red Hat Linux. So there is a halt command, but all it really is shutdown -H. There's a reboot command. All that is shutdown -R. And there's a power off command. All that is shutdown -H. Now, shutdown -H or power off will really actually turn the power off if the computer has hardware support for that. So if you can issue a software command and the hardware will actually follow it and shut the system down and power off, shutdown -H or power off will both perform a halt that will turn that power off. So who can do these things to the system? Who can utilize these various commands? Well, you must be root to execute shutdown. If we just go back a previous slide and look at the power here, the ability to reboot the computer. If we go even further back and notice that we can tell the computer what to do at a future point in time, those are really commands that we don't want everybody to be able to do. So we must be root to be able to execute the shutdown command. But what if we want someone beyond the root user to be able to do those? If there's an administrator or a power user with a specific requirement or capability to be able to do that, well, we do have another option. Another user can be added to the etc shutdown.allow file. And that file is just a simple list of individuals who can shut down the system with their usernames. Now, this is going to be very important because in many cases, as we talk later about good security practices, we may not even have the root user's name as a name that a person can log in as. So in the good practices, we may be logged in as a user called admin or administrator, or our username, such as Darren, could be attached to root privileges. I'm not the root user, but I still need to be able to shut down the system. So I need to be added to the shutdown.allow file. Users other than root can also use the -A flag to prompt the reading of this access file. So if they're in there, by default, if I issue the shutdown command with my username and I'm not root, it won't allow me to. So to tell the system to read the shutdown.allow file, to allow me to shut down the system, if I know that my name's in there, then I have to use the -A flag along with shutdown to be able to shut the system down. Now, you'll see, and I'm sure you understand that as we've talked about this, understanding the run levels, as important as it was for system startup, it's similarly important for shutdown. Really, understanding the run levels helps us to understand what those other commands were doing. That the halt is taking the system to a level 0. That the reboot is taking the system to a level 6. In the background, shutdown is simply accessing init to execute those actions anyway. In reality, it really is switching the system to a level 6. That's all it's doing from its standpoint. So we've spoken about different ways in which we can shut down or reboot the system. One easy way to get help on shutdown is to just type in just that, shutdown. We know that shutdown -R will reboot the system, and we can do that. We can say shutdown -R and designate now, and the system will shut down immediately. Or it'll reboot immediately there with that -R flag. If we want to halt the system, -H now will shut down the system immediately. And then as the help here gives us, we have different time intervals we can wait prior to sending a warning message and so on. one thing that I mentioned in the module is that we have to remember that basically the shutdown tool does nothing but call the init commands to switch to be between different run levels. So understanding the run levels that we spoke about in system startup and recognizing that run levels 0 and run level 6 represent shutdown or reboot helps us to appreciate that we can do both of those by simply issuing an init command. So if I type in init 6, the system will reboot. So it just provides us another way of restarting the system. We don't have to use the shutdown commands. By knowing the run levels, we can simply tell the computer, go to init level 6, which is what we're seeing here. Init level 6 is restarting the system. Notice we now get a message, please stand by while rebooting the system. My virtual machine is restarting. I'm back at the grub menu. My OS will restart. Now I'm using virtual machine, so while that one's starting, I'll switch to another server. And I'll show you how an init 0 might work using this particular server. Prior to opening my terminal, I just want to point out that if you are using the graphic interface, you have a shutdown command here where you can again restart the system or shut it down. There's also a warning to shut down in 60 seconds, which is the default behavior, but I'll cancel that. I'll go into a terminal and I'll just tell this particular virtual machine to shut down completely. I'll switch to the root user, issue an init 0. It exits the graphic environment and begins shutting down the system entirely. What it'll do is it'll shut down these services completely until it gets to the point where there's just a very simple shell prompt and it's safe to power off the system. And that system has now been shut down. Now I've returned to my other virtual machine that I rebooted, and it is back and operational. So again, two different ways to shut down using the command lines or using the init command. We can use shutdown and reboot commands, and we can also use the graphic tool here. So do you have questions? If so, please use the question and comment box. And thanks for joining us for this module.